Okay, Mike Masato, CEO of Staff Driven Dental and the Dental Road Warrior, returning for episode 110 in this series. So today I'd like to speak to the older doctors out there that may be listening to this. So if you've been at this for 15, maybe 20 or more years, you can get your hearing aids, put them in so you can hear me, and I'll wait until you come back to me. But in all seriousness, look, the reason why I want to speak to you guys a little bit, because I've had the pleasure lately of working with a lot more younger doctors coming on board with the program. And it's an interesting phenomenon when you start comparing the mental state, the mind operative, how doctors think, younger doctors versus older doctors. And I got to tell you something, where the older doctors may have the skill and the experience and the years under their belt in practice, there's a lot of great things about younger doctors that don't get in their own way, which is mainly their own heads. So I want to speak to the doctors out there that have been at this for a while, because there's a lot of things that you may not be aware of that you're doing and how you're thinking that may be holding you back from being better, from having a better practice, to having your optimal practice out there. Because as years go on, it's very easy to get jaded. It's very easy to get beat down in this game and figure this is the way it is, the way it's got to be, and just stick with what you got at this point. Whereas younger doctors, are hungry. They want to change. They want to improve. They want to be better. They're looking because they have to. They're really a lot of debt. They have the bills to pay, and they're maybe just new in their own practice. So and they can admit they don't know everything. So here's the first thing right there off the top: know-it-allness. One of the things that holds you guys back that are older is that you get to the state in your life when you start to think that you know it all. And that brings on a condition called contempt prior to investigation. So in other words, you think you have it figured out, and even though you don't know what you don't know, and therefore that becomes the bar against learning anything new, and that's what holds you back, and that really can be a big problem when you start to think. I always say, once you think you know it all, you're done. One of my favorite quotes that I mentioned, I think, in this series early on at some point is, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts, right? So again, that's a bar from you getting better and getting and going beyond where you are right now. And it is a big blind spot that you think it could, because I can tell you from being in your practices and seeing what you're doing with your business that's in there, you don't know it all, okay? And I hope you wouldn't take that same approach with clinical dentistry. Because clinical dentistry is constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly getting better. That's why you go for CE and you go beyond for what dental school taught you, which wasn't a lot. They made you marginally proficient in dentistry and you got better later. And the reason why you got better later is because you continue to learn new things and get better at your craft. And learning the new innovations that have come out as dentistry continues to advance and improve. Well, guess what? The same thing happens with the business of dentistry. Right? It continues to evolve all the time. And if you think you have it all figured out in business because you've been at it for a while, and you don't, because you don't work on it the same way you do clinically, so that can be a bar getting in your way. And then we get these fixed ideas in our way. We get fixed in our ways because we have fixed ideas. We're convinced that this is the way it has to be because everyone else is like this. You start talking to your colleagues that have been at it for a while, and they're all in the same, misery loves company scenario here, and they're all commiserating about insurances and the economy and how bad things are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have it in our head, well, that's the way that's everybody, right? Well, it's not everybody. I can tell you that for a fact, because the people that I work with, the clients that I work with, are all doing well, and many of them are your age, and they're booming and they're kicking butt. The one thing that separates them from you is because, right, they basically don't have these fixed ideas there. This is the way it is, right? They're staying in the game and all the time, and they're constantly working on it and constantly looking at the whole thing, right? So this is another thing that's holding you back, that maybe keeping you from these ideas you have in your head that you're convinced the way they are, that maybe they're not. And that's why it's good to talk to somebody. And then we get comfortable as a result of that. I talk about comfort zone a lot. If the number one thing that stops you in practice is the urge to want to keep it all the same. And this is one of the biggest challenges I have when we bring our coaches into these practices that we work with, is they bring us in saying they want change, agreeing to change, and then they don't want to change, right? Because it's a comfort level thing. I heard a quote recently from a doctor telling me, well, like the devil, is better than the saint you don't. I'm like, where did you get that one from, right? If you have a devil in your practice that's robbing you blind, right? I'd rather roll the dice with the saint I don't know, and hopefully I don't have a criminal that I just hired if I do a good hiring process right there. I mean, come on, right? So that's how bad it can get, that you really start believing that having somebody that's that bad in your practice, is, at least I have some familiarity with this person, is better than going out and trying to find somebody new. Because why? Well, it's so hard to find good people out there. Another fixed idea you may have. It's not that hard to find good people out there in this day and age, I'm telling you, if you know what you're doing, right? You have to know how to attract these people. We attract and place great people in practices all the time. And we're finding amazing team players out there. You have to know how to recruit them. You have to know how to integrate them, train them, and bring them into your practice, right? But they are out there. But again, there's an art and science to that too. Just like there's an art and science to doing dentistry, there's an art and science of the hiring practices as well too, right? And it is changing out there, and it is shifting, right? So settling, for what you got right now is another blind spot, right? That's holding you back. The younger doctors that are in there too, a lot of times they're acquiring practice. They don't want to settle for what they got or what they inherited. They want to move on. They want to change. They see it right away in their practice. They want to get it better. They want their people in there that they're going to have their back, not something in their back, right? So that's a big thing too, right? And the other thing is, being in your head about everything. Right? This is another thing that happens with older doctors over time, is we start to go into a process of basically computational insanity, when we roll everything around in our head constantly looking for an answer indefinitely, and we think about it and we mull it over and we consider it, and I'll get back to you and I'll think about it, and you know what? Nothing ever happens, because there's no answers up there. If you had all the answers, you could figure out if you mulled on things long enough. Wouldn't that be great? If we all sat around and mulled on something, mulled it over and thought about it for a while and rolled it out in our head, and eventually at one point a slot would open and a card would come out like the old time computers, and there would be the answer. Well, that's not how it works, unfortunately, right? The answers are there, but you need the right person in your life discussing it with you, talking to you, to kind of pull them out. Say, hey, take a look at this. Let's come to some conclusions here and come to the correct answer, right? But all this paralysis of analysis is doing, and the over-analysis of everything you're doing in your life, is just holding you back. It's not getting you anywhere in practice. And then you frustrate your team, right? Because a lot of them want to move forward. They see these things about you, and they try to come to you, and then you don't want to listen to them. Right? And I can't tell you how many times behind closed doors I have great staff members telling me, they just want to shake the doctor, they want to choke him out or her out, because they don't want to listen to them, and they don't want to change, and they don't want to improve, and they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. I mean, if they can see it, you need to see it too, right? And this is the difference where you are. And again, there's no reason why, and you may get frustrated because why? You're doing your thing for so many years, and all of a sudden here comes this young doc, opens up shop in town, who's definitely not as good as you clinically. But why are they kicking ass in business? Why all of a sudden all the new patients going over there? Why is they getting all the good reviews and all the great stuff coming out on social media, and whatever? Why? Because they don't have the same mental limitations holding them back when it comes to all the things I just talked about, when it comes to looking at the business, right? Because again, you have a business you're responsible for. You can't put it on autopilot. You can try to put it on autopilot, just go with the flow and see what happens. Right? But you're going to see your practice dwindle away over time because you're not working on it. It's not getting any better, right? So take a lesson from the younger generation, older docs listening to this. It doesn't have to be the way that it is if you're not happy with it. If you're not happy with it, if it needs to be better, or it should be better, and conceptually you know that, change it. You're smart people, right? If you have a person who comes into your practice, a patient who has got disease of the mouth, and it's a non-optimal health situation, I hope you wouldn't say, well, you're gonna have to just live with it. That's just the way it is. What are you gonna do? We'll just compromise and live it the way it is. No, you're gonna do whatever it takes to make that better, because that your craft and your trade, what's optimal for this person health-wise. And as a doctor, you would never allow anything go but the best possible care, hopefully, to walk out of your office. All right? So like I said, food for thought. Like one of my gut check videos. Hope this is helpful. All right, but again, a shift in mental attitude, a shift in mental approach, maybe taking some lessons from your younger colleagues will help you get you be in a much better place in your own practice. Appreciate you guys watching this series. If you're liking them, please share them out there, and I'll be back with another episode in the near future.